What if Santa Claus was never meant to be kind? What if the smiling man in red is just the final mask worn by something far older and far darker? Why does a figure who knows when you've been bad come from winter myths filled with ghosts, demons, and judgment? And why were children once more afraid of Christmas than excited by it? Tonight, we're not talking about reindeer or wrapping paper. We're pulling apart the legend layer by layer, from sky-riding gods and winter hunts to demon companions, punished children, rebranded saints, and the moment a soft drink company turned fear into comfort. This isn't a story about Santa as you know him. It's about who he used to be and why we chose to forget. Stay with me, because once you see what's hiding under the red suit, Christmas will never feel the same again. What Santa Claus was never meant to be cute. Let's start there. The guy behind the red suit? He wasn't invented in a Coca-Cola office. He was a 4th century bishop who lived through persecution, watched Christians tortured, and allegedly punched a priest in the face at the most important church meeting in history. Imagine it. 300 bishops, the Roman emperor watching, everyone arguing about who Jesus really is. And one old bishop from Myra stands up, walks across the room, and slaps a theologian mid-speech. That's Santa on his early career path. He's stripped of his rank, thrown into a cell, career cancelled before Twitter was even a thing. That night, the story says, Christ and Mary show up, hand his robe and gospel back like, yeah, he went too far, but for the right reason. This is the man who later becomes the model for Santa Claus. Not a soft grandpa, but a survivor of the Great Persecution, when refusing to worship the Roman gods could literally get you burned, beheaded, or worked to death in mines. To Nicholas, faith wasn't a mood. People died for it. So when some smooth-talking priest started rewriting who Christ is, Nicholas didn't see intellectual debate. He saw the memory of martyrs being casually edited for comfort. And that's the part we erased. We kept the beard, the red clothes, the "he sees you when you're sleeping" line. But we deleted the man who was willing to lose everything, rather than smile politely at a lie. Maybe the scariest truth about Santa Claus is that the real one didn't come to make us feel cozy. He came to remind us that some things are worth a slap, a cell, and a scar, and that's the kind of courage no chimney can hide. 2. Santa Claus didn't start in a workshop. He started in the sky, leading a ghost army. Before Santa became a friendly home invader with a laugh like ho ho ho, he was closer to Odin, the Norse god of war, death, and really aggressive winter vibes. Think less shopping mall photo, and more, if you hear him coming, hide. Odin wasn't just some wise old guy with poetry hobbies. He was the All-Father, one-eyed, bearded, terrifyingly curious, and absolutely obsessed with watching people. Sounds familiar already? Keep going. Every winter, during the darkest nights of the year, Odin was believed to ride across the sky at the head of something called the Wild Hunt. Not a parade, not festive. A screaming storm of ghosts, warriors, and spirits racing through the night. If you were outside when it passed, congratulations. You might get dragged away, cursed, or straight up disappear. And yes, he flew. Odin rode an 8-legged horse named Sleipnir, faster than anything alive, leaping across the heavens. Kids left food out for the horse, hay, straw, hoping Odin would spare their house. Or maybe leave a gift. Sound uncomfortable yet? He knew everything. Odin sent his ravens, Hugin and Munin, thought and memory, across the world to spy on humans and report back. Basically, an ancient surveillance system. Naughty or nice? Odin already knew. And here's the uncomfortable part, We don't put on Christmas sweaters. Odin wasn't there to reward everyone. He judged. He punished. He decided who deserved protection and who didn't survive the winter. Over time, cultures softened him. The fear got edited out. The storm became snow. The judgment became coal. The god became grandpa. But Santa's core behavior didn't come from kindness. It came from authority. A powerful old man, watching from above, traveling the winter sky, rewarding good behavior and punishing bad. That's not cute folklore. That's Odin with better PR. So next time someone says Santa is just harmless fun, remember, before he knocked on chimneys, he hunted souls. And maybe the reason he still feels so powerful is because part of us remembers who he really was. 3. If you think Santa was invented to make winter cozy, you've never heard of the Wild Hunt. Long before Christmas lights and feel-good playlists, winter had a reputation. It wasn't magical, it was hostile. And people genuinely believed that on certain nights, the sky itself went hunting. The Wild Hunt wasn't a cute legend parents told kids before bedtime. It was a warning. Stay inside. Lock the door. Don't look outside when the wind starts screaming. Because that screaming, it wasn't just weather. Across Northern Europe, people believed that during the darkest nights of winter, a supernatural procession raced across the sky. Ghosts, warriors, spirits of the dead, led by a god. Sometimes Odin, sometimes another dark rider. Different names, same message. Winter is watching you. If you were unlucky enough to be outside when the hunt passed overhead, the stories got ugly. You might be dragged into the sky, cursed, driven mad, or simply vanish. Medieval people weren't playing with metaphors here. They planned their lives around this fear. That's why doors stayed shut, fires stayed lit, and families gathered inside together. Not for vibes, for survival. Here's the twist nobody puts on holiday cards. This fear shaped Christmas behavior. The idea of a powerful figure moving through the night, judging, passing by homes, deciding who is spared and who isn't. That didn't start with stockings. It started with terror. The Wild Hunt taught one rule. Winter rewards preparation and punishes recklessness. Be home, be respectful, follow the rules, or pay for it. Over time, people softened the story. The screams became sleigh bells. The storm became snow. The hunter became a visitor. The judgment became symbolic. Much easier on the nerves. But deep down, the structure never changed. Someone still moves through the winter night. Someone still sees you. Someone still decides how the story ends. And maybe that's why Santa works so well. Because beneath the cozy lies and warm lights, we still remember when winter wasn't friendly. 4 Santa Claus once got arrested for punching a priest. Yes, that's Santa. Forget the sleigh. Forget the cookies. In the year 325 AD, Santa, back when he answered to Nicholas, Bishop of Myra, attended the most important meeting in Christian history, the Council of Nicaea. 300 bishops, the Roman Emperor Constantine, history being written in real time. And then, Nicholas lost his temper. A theologian named Arius was calmly arguing that Jesus wasn't fully divine. Very polite, very intellectual, very wrong, according to Nicholas, a man who had watched people die for that belief. So instead of raising his hand or submitting a footnote, Nicholas walked across the room and punched Arius in the face. Church diplomacy at its finest. This did not go over well. Nicholas was immediately stripped of his bishop's rank and thrown into prison. Career over. No comeback tour. No redemption arc. Just a cold cell and the crushing realization that violence at a church council is apparently frowned upon. But here's where the legend earns its chaos badge. That night, according to tradition, Christ and the Virgin Mary appeared in Nicholas's cell. They asked why he was imprisoned. "For loving the truth," he replied. By morning, the guards found him fully robed again, chains loosened, Bible back in his hands like nothing happened. And instead of doubling down on the punishment, the church reinstated him. This is the man who became Santa Claus. Not a conflict-avoidant people-pleaser, not a brand mascot. A man who believed some ideas were dangerous enough to fight over, literally. He didn't care about optics, he cared about conviction. We took that guy and turned him into a professional people satisfier. We kept his beard, we kept his list, but we removed the part where he stood up, took a risk, and accepted consequences for what he believed was right. Because a Santa who smiles is comforting, but a Santa who throws a punch for truth, that one still makes us nervous. And maybe that's exactly why we edited him out. 5. The first Christmas gifts weren't toys, they were emergency rescues. Long before Santa started rewarding good behavior with plastic miracles, Nicholas of Myra was running what we'd now call a midnight charity operation. Quiet, illegal, and life-saving. Here's the situation. A poor father had 3 daughters and 0 money. In the ancient world, that wasn't just sad, it was dangerous. Without dowries, the girls couldn't marry. No marriage meant no protection. And for families backed into a corner, the next option was brutal and final. Nicholas heard about it and didn't give a sermon. He didn't post an inspirational quote. He acted. At night, in secret, no applause. According to legend, Nicholas waited until the lights were out, then tossed a bag of gold through the family's window. One daughter saved. Another night, another bag. Another life spared. By the 3rd visit, the father figured it out and caught him in the act. Nicholas begged him not to tell anyone. This wasn't charity for credit. This was charity for survival. That's the part we don't put on wrapping paper. Santa today believes in you. Nicholas believed time was running out. The stockings, by the way, they come from this story. Some versions say the gold landed in socks drying by the fire. Cute detail, built on pure desperation. And let's be honest, this wasn't about rewarding nice kids. This was about stopping a disaster before it happened. Nicholas didn't give gifts because it felt good. He gave them because someone had to step in, and no one else was moving. That's a very different kind of generosity. We sanitized it. We softened it. We turned it into tinsel and jingles. But the origin isn't sweet. It's fierce, protective, urgent. The real Santa didn't ask if you were naughty or nice. He asked who needed help now, before it was too late. And maybe that's the coldest truth of all. We didn't turn Nicholas into Santa to make the story happier. We did it because the real one was too real and too close to the dark places we still pretend don't exist. 6. Santa Claus once raised children from a barrel of meat. No, that's not a deleted horror movie scene. That's medieval Christmas. For centuries, one of the most popular stories about St. Nicholas wasn't about gifts, reindeer, or joy. It was about 3 children, murdered, chopped up, salted, and stored like pork by a butcher. Merry Christmas. Here's how the story goes. 3 boys were traveling and stopped at an inn for the night. The innkeeper welcomed them warmly, fed them well, and waited until they were asleep. Then he killed them, sometimes with a knife, sometimes with an axe. Medieval storytellers weren't subtle, but the horror didn't stop there. The butcher cut the children into pieces, packed them into a barrel, covered them in salt, and planned to sell them as meat. Business was business. Human flesh, same price. 7 years passed. Then St. Nicholas arrived at the inn. According to legend, Nicholas took one look at the meal on the table and immediately knew what it really was. He went down to the cellar, found the barrel, prayed, and the children stood up, alive, whole, complaining that their nap had been too short. That's it. That's the miracle. For medieval families, this story wasn't shocking. It was comforting. Child mortality was everywhere. Parents buried kids regularly. The fear wasn't imaginary, it was daily life. This legend said, even if the worst happens, even if a child is lost in the most brutal way possible, darkness doesn't get the last word. And here's the wild part. This wasn't some obscure story. It was painted in churches, carved into stone, taught to children for hundreds of years. St. Nicholas standing over a barrel with resurrected kids was once as normal as Santa and reindeer are today. We didn't forget this story because it was fake. We forgot it because it was too honest. Modern Santa promises comfort. Old St. Nicholas promised something harder, that even when the world is brutal, goodness can still break through it. We replaced resurrection with wrapping paper, but deep down, the barrel is still there, reminding us that hope was never meant to be cute. 7. Before Santa Claus mastered chimneys, he controlled the sea. Seriously, long before he became the patron saint of shopping malls and childhood lies, Nicholas of Myra had a very different fan base. Sailors, prisoners, and people who thought they were about to die. This man didn't spread cheer. He ruined executions. Legend says Nicholas had a nasty habit of showing up exactly when things were about to go terribly wrong. Storms at sea, he calmed them. Ships about to break apart on the rocks. Winds stopped. Sailors survived and immediately became walking PR agents, spreading his reputation across every coastal city they touched. If you worked on the sea in the ancient world, Nicholas wasn't optional. He was insurance. But it didn't stop there. Prisoners, especially those facing execution, prayed to Nicholas, and somehow their sentences got postponed, or cancelled, or mysteriously reconsidered at the last second. Chains loosened, orders changed, guards hesitated, bureaucracy glitched in their favor. Coincidence? Maybe. Enough coincidences to build a legend? Absolutely. This is the same Nicholas who once punched a heretic, saved girls from sex slavery, and resurrected kids from a butcher's barrel. Are we sensing a pattern yet? The man did not believe in staying in his lane. He didn't wait for permission. He didn't follow process. He didn't submit forms. He intervened, violently when needed, miraculously when possible. That's why people didn't see him as nice. They saw him as powerful. To sailors, he wasn't a gift giver. He was the difference between drowning and seeing land again. To prisoners, he wasn't festive. He was the slim chance that tomorrow might still exist. And somehow, somewhere along the way, we took this storm-commanding, chain-breaking chaos bishop and turned him into a guy who panics if he forgets to eat cookies. Modern Santa brings comfort. Nicholas brought hope under pressure. And maybe that's the part that still hits hardest. The idea that someone once watched the storm, the cell, the gallows, and said, "Not today." That's the kind of magic no wrapping paper can replace. 8. Santa Claus didn't always believe in everyone. In the Netherlands, he kept receipts. Meet Sinterklaas, Santa before he went soft. Tall hat, red robes, serious face, arrives on a boat like a boss, and most importantly, he shows up to judge. Dutch kids didn't write wish lists, they prepared alibis. Sinterklaas wasn't just dropping presents, he was running an annual performance review. Good behavior, candy, toys, praise. Bad behavior, coal, sticks. public disappointment, and worse, being remembered. Because Santa Claus had a book, a real one, a big, metaphorical, I've been watching you ledger, where children's actions were recorded all year long. You weren't guessing where you stood. You knew. And Santa Claus didn't work alone. He arrived with companions whose entire job was enforcement. They reminded kids that good and bad weren't opinions. They had consequences. This wasn't trauma for sport. It was social programming. Behavior mattered. Actions echoed. The annual arrival of Santa Claus was a major event. Parades, crowds, songs, children lining the streets pretending they hadn't lied, cheated, or skipped chores. He rode a white horse through town like a moral auditor with excellent PR. And here's the irony. This version of Santa was far more honest. No vague he knows energy, no fake equality, no participation trophies. You either showed up right or you didn't. When this tradition crossed the Atlantic, something happened. Americans loved the gifts, loved the magic, loved the mystery. But judgment? That part felt uncomfortable. So they edited it out. The book stayed. The consequences didn't. Modern Santa watches, but doesn't act. Santa Claus watched and responded. He wasn't cruel, he was consistent. We didn't change Santa because kids changed. We changed him because adults did. Because a Santa who judges behavior forces us to ask uncomfortable questions. And deep down, we preferred a Santa who smiles instead of one who actually remembers. 9. Santa Claus didn't travel with elves. He traveled with threats. For most of history, Santa wasn't alone, and his companions were not cute, small, or unionized. They were monsters, demons, punishers, the kind of co-workers HR still has nightmares about. St. Nicholas handled the rewards. His entourage handled the rest. Across Europe, wherever Nicholas went, something dark followed. These figures carried chains, whips, sacks, and very clear messages for misbehaving children. Be good or be gone. And people took this seriously. In alpine villages, kids knew the sound of rattling chains meant it was time to behave immediately. Not tomorrow, not after Christmas, now. Because if St. Nicholas decided you weren't worth the trouble, his companion would handle your exit strategy. These weren't bedtime stories, they were behavioral policy. Krampus is the most famous one. Horned, hairy, half-goat, all nightmare. But he wasn't alone. Different regions had different enforcers. Some beat naughty kids with birch switches. Others dragged them away in baskets. A few were rumored to eat them. Festive. The logic was brutal, but clear. Goodness without consequences is meaningless. Reward without risk is just free stuff. So St. Nicholas came with balance, gift in one hand, terror on a leash. And here's the wild part. Adults participated happily. Young men dressed as demons. Villages held parades. Entire communities acted out the fear so children wouldn't have to learn it the hard way later. This wasn't cruelty, it was preparation. Winter was dangerous. Life was fragile. Choices mattered. Then modernity showed up and said, yeah, let's not do that. The demons were cut. The chains disappeared. The sack turned into a toy bag. Punishment became symbolic. Eventually, it vanished entirely. We kept Santa. We fired his enforcers. Now Santa watches everyone, judges no one, and delivers gifts regardless of behavior. Comforting? Sure. But the old version understood something we forgot. Light only matters because darkness is real. And Santa once knew that, because he walked straight through it, demons in tow. 10. If Santa Claus had a PR nightmare, it would be named Krampus. Before Christmas got soft, cozy, and legally child-safe, Santa had backup, and Krampus was it. Not an assistant, not a helper, more like crowd control. Krampus wasn't misunderstood. He was designed to be terrifying. Picture this: horns, hooves, wild hair, a long tongue, chains rattling in the dark. While St. Nicholas handed out treats to well-behaved kids, Krampus handled the ones who didn't make the cut. No coal, no warning letters, just birch sticks, chains, and in some versions, a sack to drag you away. Yes, drag you away. On the night of December 5th, known as Krampusnacht, entire alpine villages turned into controlled chaos. Men dressed as demons ran through the streets, rattling chains, chasing people, swatting legs. Children didn't ask, "Is he real?" They asked, "Will he find me?" And here's the shocking part: adults approved. Krampus wasn't there to traumatize kids for fun. He was there to send a message winter demanded to be taken seriously. Be respectful. Follow the rules. Understand that actions have consequences, immediate, loud, and sometimes frightening ones. This wasn't cruelty. It was medieval parenting, mixed with survival logic. Winter killed people. Hunger was real. Disorder wasn't cute. So Krampus existed to make sure children learned limits before the world taught them harsher lessons. Then society changed. Fear became unacceptable. Demons were labeled problematic. Chains didn't test well with focus groups. So Krampus was quietly fired. Santa went solo. Punishment became metaphorical. Judgment became optional. Today, Santa threatens coal and delivers gifts anyway. Krampus would never. And that's exactly why he's making a comeback. In movies, parades, memes, and masks. Because somewhere deep down, people feel it. A Christmas with no shadow feels fake. Santa brings joy. Krampus brought balance. And if that makes you uncomfortable, good. That means the old monster still works, even when he's no longer knocking on the door. 11. If Krampus scared you, meet Frau Perchta, the Christmas enforcer who made demons look part-time. She wasn't Santa's helper. She was Santa's HR department, internal audit, and final warning rolled into one. Frau Perchta comes from the Alpine regions, Austria, Bavaria, northern Italy, and she didn't care if you were naughty or nice. She cared if you were lazy. And trust me, medieval laziness had consequences. Perchta showed up during the 12 days of Christmas, that weird limbo between December 25th and January 6th when the year is dying and nobody knows what comes next. While everyone else was feasting, Perchta was checking homework. Literally, women were expected to finish all their spinning and weaving before the year ended. If the work was done, Perchta left coins or small gifts. Fair enough. If it wasn't, she cut your stomach open, removed your organs, and stuffed you with straw, rocks, or broken glass. That's why her nickname was the Belly Slitter. Festive. Sometimes she appeared as a beautiful woman in white, glowing like a winter spirit. Other times as an ugly old hag with wild hair and one goose foot. A reminder that expectations change fast when you disappoint the wrong authority. And here's the point. Nobody says out loud. Perchta wasn't just about fear. She represented order in a season of chaos. Winter was dangerous. Food was limited. Discipline kept families alive. Perchta punished those who didn't carry their weight, not out of cruelty, but because survival demanded structure. When Christianity arrived, they didn't erase her. They rebranded her. A pagan goddess became a monster. A seasonal judge became a cautionary tale. But she never disappeared. Even today, Perchtenlauf festivals feature masked figures storming through towns, reminding everyone that winter still watches who earns their comfort. We like Santa because he asks nothing. Perchta demanded effort. Modern Christmas celebrates rest. Old Christmas demanded responsibility. And maybe the reason Frau Perchta still lingers in folklore is simple. Deep down, we know winter doesn't reward wishes. It rewards work. That truth is sharp. And Perchta never softened the blade. 12. Santa Claus exists today because Martin Luther was annoyed. Seriously, if the Protestant Reformation had a side quest, it was, let's clean up Christmas. And that decision accidentally created Kris Kringle. Here's the problem, according to Martin Luther. Europe was obsessed with saints, especially St. Nicholas. Kids got gifts on December 6th, churches threw festivals, and Nicholas was basically running Christmas. For Luther, that was unacceptable. Too Catholic, too many saints, too much attention not aimed at Jesus. So Luther tried to fix it. His solution? Replace St. Nicholas with the Christ child, Christ kind. No saint, no bishop, no punch-throwing theologians, just baby Jesus delivering gifts. Soft, pure, theologically correct. On paper, this was genius. In practice, chaos. Christ-kind was invisible, abstract, and hard to market. You can't threaten kids with a baby. You can't scold them. You can't ride through town in a parade as an idea. Still, the tradition spread. German families taught children that Christ-kind came secretly on Christmas Eve, unseen, leaving gifts behind. Sound familiar? Quiet visits, nighttime, moral framing. The structure survived, only the character changed. Then German immigrants carried this idea to America. And America did what it does best, misunderstood it. English speakers heard Christ-kind and went, sure, that's Kris Kringle. Close enough. Nobody checked. The name stuck. The meaning didn't. Now we had a gift-bringer with a saint's habits, a baby's origin story, and a name born from a pronunciation error. Naturally, he merged with Santa. And just like that, theology lost the fight to vibes. Kris Kringle became Santa Claus with better branding. Protestant intentions collapsed into pop culture. The Christ child quietly exited stage left. And a 16th century religious reform accidentally helped create the most profitable Christmas icon in history. The irony? Luther wanted Christmas to be more serious. Instead, he helped give us a magical old man who sneaks into houses and never asks hard questions. And maybe that's the real miracle of Christmas. Even when humans try to control meaning, the story does whatever it wants anyway. 13. Before Santa Claus became a home invasion specialist with a smile, Father Christmas was a party animal. No gifts, no lists, no judgment, just vibes. In medieval England, Father Christmas wasn't showing up for children. He was showing up for adults who needed a drink. He was the walking spirit of midwinter survival. Feast hard, drink deep, sing loud, and forget that the world is cold, dark, and trying to kill you. This man did not care if you were naughty or nice. He cared if the table was full. Father Christmas wore long robes, usually green, sometimes red, and symbolized abundance. Meat on the table, ale in the cups, music, noise, laughter. His whole job was to remind people that winter hadn't won yet. And then, religion ruined everything. Along came the Protestant reformers, and they were not fans. Too much drinking, too much joy, too much pagan nonsense. Celebration without moral discipline made them deeply uncomfortable, which is always a bad sign for fun. So Father Christmas got a makeover. The wild feasting spirit was domesticated. The drunken uncle of winter was told to sober up. He stopped encouraging excess and started promoting proper family values. Slowly, quietly, the party got shut down. Here's the twist. He didn't disappear. Instead, Father Christmas merged with St. Nicholas, with moral judgment, with gift-giving, with rules. The feast became presence. The joy became behavior-based. Celebration turned conditional. By the time English traditions crossed into America, Father Christmas had fully evolved. The green robes shifted red. The feast turned commercial. The wine turned into milk and cookies, and the spirit of chaos was replaced by logistics. What was once a loud reminder that life is short and winter is cruel became a carefully scheduled holiday experience, but traces remain. That holiday cheer everyone talks about, that's Father Christmas whispering from the past. The urge to eat too much, laugh too loud, stay up too late, that's him. Not Santa. Santa manages behavior. Father Christmas celebrated survival. And maybe that's why we still feel an ache beneath the tinsel. Because deep down, winter doesn't just want gifts. It wants us to live loudly while we still can. 14. Santa Claus didn't survive the 19th century. He got a total rebrand. And the people responsible? A cozy Christmas poem and a political cartoonist. In 1823, an American professor named Clement Clark Moore released a poem that quietly assassinated every scary version of Santa that came before it. You know it as "'Twas the Night Before Christmas." At the time, it was basically a viral hit. Moore's Santa didn't judge, didn't punish, didn't bring demons. He was small, cheerful, kind of chubby, and honestly, a little silly. He laughed, he winked, he smoked a pipe, he flew in with reindeer, not ghost armies, and left gifts like a friendly burglar with excellent manners. This Santa wasn't here to scare kids straight. He was here to make them sleep easy. And America loved it. Then came Thomas Nast, a 19th century cartoonist who took Moore's soft Santa and locked the look in permanently. In magazines like Harper's Weekly, Nast drew Santa again and again. Big belly, warm smile, fur-trimmed coat, friendly eyes, no demons, no switches, no judgment squad, just vibes. Nast even gave Santa a North Pole address, a workshop, elves, a whole cinematic universe before movies existed. By the time the century ended, the transformation was complete. The saint was gone. The enforcers were gone. The shadows were gone. What replaced them was perfect for a growing consumer society. A Santa who gave without asking, loved without judging, and never made adults uncomfortable. It wasn't an accident. It was survival. A scary Santa couldn't live in a world of department stores and children's books. A gentle one could. So the wild hunt became sleigh bells. Judgment became coal, mostly symbolic, and centuries of darkness were politely shown the door. We say Santa changed because times changed, but the truth is simpler. We didn't want a Santa who asked hard questions. We wanted one who smiled. And that smile still works, because it hides everything we chose to forget. 15. Santa Claus didn't conquer the world by magic. He did it with branding. Enter Coca-Cola, the final boss of Santa's evolution. By the early 20th century, Santa already existed, but he was inconsistent. Sometimes thin, sometimes serious, sometimes green, sometimes bishop-coded, sometimes vaguely unsettling. Great folklore, terrible for global marketing. Coca-Cola saw a problem and fixed it. In 1931, they hired illustrator Haddon Sundblom and gave him a simple task: make Santa human, friendly, and impossible to ignore. What Sundblom created wasn't a saint. It was a person you'd trust alone with your kids and your fridge. Rosy cheeks, big smile, warm eyes, red suit that just happened to match the brand colors. Coincidence? Sure, totally. This Santa wasn't watching you. He was inviting you. No judgment, no demons, no moral panic, just warmth, comfort, and a soda break from reality. The message was subtle but powerful. Christmas isn't about fear, effort, or consequences anymore. It's about feeling good, preferably while holding a Coke. And it worked. Globally. Within a few decades, Sundblom's Santa erased every competitor. Regional traditions collapsed. Dark companions vanished. Saints retired. Gods were fired. This version became the Santa, the one burned into memory, movies, malls, and childhood itself. Was Coca-Cola evil? No. Were they brilliant? Absolutely. They didn't invent Santa. They finished him. They stripped away the last remaining sharp edges and left us with something smooth, safe, and endlessly reproducible. A holiday mascot built not to challenge, but to comfort. Not to judge, but to sell. Santa stopped asking if you'd earned anything. He just showed up. And maybe that's why this version won. Because in a world already full of pressure, fear, and judgment, the most powerful myth wasn't the one that demanded better behavior. It was the one that smiled and said, "Relax, you're fine." But somewhere beneath the red suit and soft laugh, the older story still breathes. And once you see it, you can't unsee who Santa used to be.